R.J. Manuelian, attorney. Topic will be involved shootings and excessive force.
Good evening, everybody. My name is R.J. Manuelian. I'm a civil rights attorney. I do criminal defense also. This is my secretary and right-hand assistant, Ashley London. She is a USC student and an aspiring prosecutor. One day, she's going to be prosecuting people. So why is she here? She's here because she wants to get both sides of the coin. She wants to learn how to be a prosecutor. To be a good prosecutor, you got to understand people. You got to understand why people act the way they do. And attitudes, as we all agree, are very important. Let me tell you about what I do. I've been representing a lot of young kids in Compton for the past decade, over a decade, who are falsely accused of crimes they didn't commit. Young African Americans mostly. And it's true. There are a lot of people in this community with voices that aren't heard. And the problem is, from my perspective, a lot of these kids get these public defenders who are overworked and underpaid and wind up pleading guilty for things that they didn't do. It's a really bad epidemic because if you're a young kid and you get a crime at an early age, it's kind of hard to get a job, which kind of leads you down this rabbit hole of crime, and it's a revolving circle. Well, if you can't get a job, what are you supposed to do? If you have a misdemeanor in your record or a felony in your record, you're tagged. That's it. I mean, you're done. It's like a resume. Why would I hire you? Why would I hire you if I could hire her without the record? So a lot of people go to court, they plead guilty for things they don't do, they get beat up by police officers and plead guilty for things they didn't do against the police officers, and that's where I come in. I do a lot of pro bono work, which means I don't charge for people that are falsely accused and that are innocent. I don't mean kids that have messed up and that didn't do something that, you know, wound up to be something more than what it was. I'm talking about the young kid who gets profiled as a gang member because he's black, because he's driving a car in the wrong neighborhood or at the wrong time, and cops that are hopped up on adrenaline just decide to pick on this kid. And the kid has no voice, and he starts asking the questions that any one of us would ask, but winds up getting beat up for it. And what are those questions? Why are you pulling me over? What did I do wrong? Seems like innocent questions. It seems like things that you and I would ask when we get pulled over. Well, see, I'm older, and most of us are older, but when you're young, especially in Compton, when you're a young kid and you're 18, cops, police officers seem to think that that is a pass for them to do whatever they want to you. That you don't have a right to ask the police officers questions. So, what am I here to do? I've done a lot of presentations on civil rights and beatings. I'm not here to really talk about beatings and civil rights. I'm here to explain to you what to do if your son or your loved one is in trouble. I have people calling me all the time saying, well, what do I do if the police officers do something to my son or do something in my presence? I had a family member say that the police officers, the sheriff's department, barged into their house, broke down the door. Grandma had almost nearly a heart attack, and she didn't know what to do. Most people don't know what to do. Do you tell the cop to F off and go home? Do you take a videotape on your camera? Do you serve them coffee and tea? What do you do? So the question is, what do I do if I'm in trouble with the law? What kinds of questions may they try to answer? First of all, the police officers, when they're at your door and they want to make an arrest, they're not there to help you, despite what they say. They're there to take your family away and put them in jail for a very long time. It's your lawyer's job to help you. So my position is, when a police officer comes, number one, don't stop or don't obstruct the investigation. You are allowed to ask questions. If they come inside your house, ask them for a piece of paper, because they're not allowed to be in your house. We all have a right to our privacy. Somebody here served in the military back there. I think it was Mr. Taylor. There are some other veterans. They all fight for our rights. And one of our rights is the right under the Constitution to be private, to have other people not come in our house, especially the government. That is the most invasive, intrusive thing that could happen to you. During dinner, somebody coming into your house and invading your privacy. And on top of that, they're going to take your son, they're going to take your grandson away. What do? Ask them for a piece of paper. Take a look at the warrant. If it's nighttime, make sure the warrant says nighttime warrant search. If it's not, you give them that piece of paper back and tell them to get the hell out of your house. They don't have a right to be there. If they have the warrant and they're allowed to be in the house, make sure that the warrant, where it says where they could search and what they could search, that's where they go and search. So for example, if they're there to go inside your garage, they go only to the garage, not to your kitchen. They don't go to your bedroom, only the garage. What are you allowed to ask? Why are you here? How can I help you? Be nice about it. I mean, they're doing their job also. You don't want to make the situation worse. A lot of my clients, they get out their camera and they start videotaping. You can't do that. You can't do that. Well, they can do that. And by you putting the camera in their face, they could actually arrest you for obstructing the investigation. I get calls all the time. All I was doing was I was videotaping them beating up my son or doing this and doing that. That's fine. But videotaping them has to be done within reasonableness. You can't go up to somebody's face. For example, I had somebody being arrested and their son was on the floor and the mom literally got in the cop's face with the camera and said, I'm videotaping you, I'm videotaping you. And guess what the cops did? They took the camera and they arrested her too, the mom. I represented both the mom and the son. And the mom said, well, what did I do? I was videotaping them beating up my son. I said, yeah, but you can't go in their face like that because they don't know if you have a knife on you. They don't know if you're going to punch them in the face. They don't know why you're there. I know you know that that's your son, but they don't know who you are. And remember, when they're making an arrest, they got things in their mind. Is somebody going to jump on me? Is somebody going to stab me? Is somebody going to interfere? So common sense is important. So what should you do if they ask you questions? First of all, if they arrest your son, and this is the number one mistake every mom and dad does, it's the most horrible mistake. Don't talk to the police. Do not speak to the police. Ashley will tell you, and we have a client that came in, committed a crime, a horrible, horrible crime. I'm not going to say what the crime was, but the mom spilled the beans. The mom also let them talk to the kid, 15, 16-year-old kid, and the kid was scared. He said everything that he did. If he didn't open his mouth and the mom didn't open their mouth, he'd have no charges against him and no arrest.
Arjun?
Yes.
Jump into that one?
I'm sorry?
Yes,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I was a defense attorney for 17 years.
I know.
As a public defender.
Right. I've seen it.
I cannot underline, bold print, highlight that enough. You have a right, if you're arrested, you have a right to remain silent, and he is completely right. In my years of experience, I don't know how many cases I tried where I knew I wouldn't even be in trial without the statement being made by the suspect. And there's weak cases which they could not win without the statement. And keep something else in mind, and what it can carry on is, remember that your communication with your son, with your grandson, it's not privileged, it's not protected. If you're a spouse, you have a conversation with your spouse, that's a privileged communication. It's between you and him. It's like talking to your doctor, talking to your priest. But not talking to your grandson. So if you call him in jail, don't talk about your case. Don't talk about the case on the phone.
Yeah, and that's another great point. My clients, when the parents go to visit them in jail, naturally you want to know what happened. Why is your son there? And you know what? That's the worst thing that you could be discussing because every single conversation is monitored. And when those videos come to my office, when the mom is saying, I want to hear you the truth, I'm not going to hire an attorney until you tell me, and the kid tells him, it's too late at that point, you're doing damage. Don't speak to the police. I know it sounds counterproductive and it sounds like something that, some people think, well, if I haven't done anything wrong, I want to talk to the police. You speaking to the police is not going to make it better, number one. They're still going to arrest your son. It's not like after you speak to them, the cops are going to say, oh, okay, you clear that up, we're going to go now. It never happens. It's just going to make the situation worse. So what you should do as a citizen when your son is getting arrested, watch, listen, take notes if you can. Notes are so important. When you hire an attorney, your attorney is going to want to know the breakdown, when they came in, what they said, what did they tell you, what do you know? What evidence do they have? Did they take the computer from the house? Did they take the car? This is what you should be doing, gathering and collecting evidence and information to give to your lawyer. So don't speak to the police. Under any circumstance, call a lawyer right away. Are there exceptions? Yes, there are some exceptions to the rule. For example, pedigree information, you got to give that. What that means is some information you have to give identification for identification purposes. What's your name? What's your son's name? Is anybody else in the house? We're going to do a check just for safety purposes. That's fine. Limited things like that are fine. For example, if you're getting pulled over for a traffic violation, you can't tell the cop to go to hell, I'm not going to give you your license. Otherwise, everybody would do that. You have to give your license. You have to give your information. You have to sign the ticket. If you don't sign the ticket, they could take you in jail because that's a promise to appear. So again, when police officers talk to you, limit the information. Also, something else that I always preach to all of my clients, be nice. Even when I get a ticket, and I know sometimes, most of the time I do deserve it, but the times that I don't deserve it, I don't give an attitude. That's just going to make things worse. In fact, I swear to you, twice last year, I was nice to the police officer that tried to cite me with the ticket. He gave me a warning. I firmly believe that it was because I was being nice to the cop. If I gave the cop an attitude problem, he was definitely going to give me the ticket. So I got out of 2 tickets, in my opinion, from just being nice. And saying, I apologize, I didn't know. Okay, how did you clock me? No, in other words, attitude is very important. We were talking about attitude before, about civil rights cases and things like that. It starts off with the attitude of the police officer as well as the person that the police officer is talking to. Can I talk to a lawyer before answering questions? Yes, you can. But here's the thing. When you're getting arrested and the police officer is there, he's not going to let you just call up a lawyer right there on the phone. I mean, the lawyer can't do anything right there. I get a lot of phone calls saying, the police are at my house right now. They're arresting my son. Come over. Well, what am I going to do? They're running the investigation. I don't even know if they're going to arrest the kid or the family member or the person. So, again, take notes. Attitude is important. Don't interfere. If you have a lawyer, keep your business card on you. It's very important. If law enforcement officers come to your house, they can lie. Police officers lie to get information. It's part of their job to lie, to get confessions. They'll bait you. They'll bait your son. What do I mean by bait? They'll make up something so that you can just say, well, that's not true. This is what happened. Whatever the police officer says, your attitude should be, okay, that's it. All right, have a nice day. Bye. Nothing else. Don't elicit information. So that is the goal. You want to keep your conversation very limited with the police officers. If they threaten you, you have a right to ask for the police officer's information. You're allowed to go up to the person and say, I'm going to take down your badge. I encourage all the entire community of Compton to file complaints against the police officers. I can't tell you how valuable that is. I've won all of my cases, and I'll get to you in a second. I know you have a long question. All of the cases that I've won, and by the way, there are a lot in Compton, I've won because people like yourselves have filed information, complaints against that police officer that arrested my client. So what happens is, when I go to court, I file a document in court to get that information. And if you don't file that information against a police officer, and if you don't do it, there's no complaint. And those complaints are heard by a jury. Do you know how effective that is? When I get a witness to come from another case that has nothing to do with my client's case, for example, you file a complaint saying the police officer was very excessive with you, okay? You come to court and you tell the juror what those cops did to you. And then I use that in summation for my argument and saying these cops have done this to everybody. It's reasonable doubt, which means you want to show the jury that this kid probably didn't do anything and these police officers are just being very aggressive. So file complaints, very important. I think that's the most important tool. We were talking about petitions and writing letters. There's nothing better than going to a police department and writing a complaint. At the very least, they'll be investigated, okay? Promotion probably won't happen that year for that guy. Bonus probably won't happen for that guy. And the more complaints you stack against that person, the more likely it is that that police officer will not do it the next time around. If you don't file a complaint, they will act with impunity, which means they'll feel like a superhero. Hey, I could keep doing this over and over again. Everybody's giving me a pass in the community. So again, writing letters is fine, But what's more important, in my opinion, is letting the justice system know that these police officers are not doing their job. Okay, so now I want to talk to you a little bit about one other thing. A topic that we were discussing, civil rights. I agree with, I think it was Mr. Taylor, somebody here mentioned, the salt and pepper, I think it was you, sir, right? Salt and pepper mix. Do you notice that in Compton, it's almost impossible to find an African American to beat the crap out of an African American kid? I haven't heard about that. I don't know if anybody else has heard about that. I've never heard of an African American police officer in Compton beating up other African American kids. It's usually Hispanic and it's usually white police officers that do that. Because I think there's a disconnect between the cultures. And I agree with the salt and pepper argument. But I have African American police officer friends that tell me they don't want to be part of that because there is a culture within the police department. I've got your back, you better get my back. That's just the us versus them mentality. We against them. But what we could do as community members, number one, is to be more in harmony with the police. Not be so aggressive and combative with the police. Because, when somebody gets killed, like Mr. Trinidad, people get outraged. But the attitude change, as somebody else mentioned, starts from the top, and it works with the community as well. And there is a gang problem in Compton. I represent a lot of gang members. And I think that has to do with the family. It starts with the family, with your children. I have children. I keep a close eye on my children. Make sure your children aren't out late at night. And if they are, where are they? What are they doing? It starts off with parenting. From the day the kid is born, it's your responsibility as a parent to mold that kid, to keep that kid in your eyesight, in your line of sight. And if you don't have him in your line of sight, that kid's probably going to be doing something that you don't want him to do. And what really bothers me is, these parents that come in, the kid's committing 6, 7 crimes over and over since 16. I ask the parents, where are you? What are you doing? And they tell me the same thing, which is, an honest answer, we're working. We're putting food on the table. But the problem is, somebody needs to keep an eye on these kids. Because when the parents aren't home, they will find influences that may be bad for them. People that supposedly give them respect. The people in the community that, they are lost, so they find kids to be lost with them. So it's an epidemic. It's not just about attitude. It's about family. It's about love. It's about the community. It's about understanding one another. It's about understanding that we're all human beings that want one thing. We want happiness and love and we want to be left alone. That's all we want, right? We just want happiness and to be left alone. And when the police officers are looking for the gang members, you all get caught in the crossfire, right? When there's a war against the gang members, people get shot. People get hurt. Let me give you a perfect example. Chris Dorner. Everybody knows Chris Dorner, right? The police officer that was going to expose LAPD for excessive force. Well, when they were looking for Chris Dorner, these 2 Keystone cops wind up shooting 2 Chinese people, 2 Asian people. Had nothing to do with it. Wasn't the right gun, it wasn't the right license plate, it wasn't the right car, and they're shooting at these 2 innocent people, right? Why does this happen? Because it's a breakdown in attitude. Chris Dorner, actually, I don't condemn what he did. I understand his frustration. I read that 23-page manifesto. I read it in detail. Most of it was really accurate. He exposes, he says that there's excessive force. He complained against this white supervisor who was kicking the crap out of a young gang member. He reported it, and they just shut him down. Not only did they shut him down, he knew that he was going to be fired, they were going to defame him, that his loyalty and his name was tarnished. Okay, he put his life. He was a former soldier. Okay, this guy sacrificed for our life. This guy wasn't a bad guy. He was just a guy that was pissed because the system is not working and people aren't listening. But it's not going to just happen with Chris Dorner. It's going to happen better in a community with one voice, with one power, a community coming out and saying, you know what? We're going to not only help you, but we're not going to let you do that anymore. Again, so how do we stop that? Complaints. Please, tell everybody, complain to the police department. You think it's not going to work. Trust me, it works. He will tell you it works. He's a former public defender. He will tell you that he gets these complaints. We get these complaints. And what do I do with these complaints? We file civil action lawsuits. You know what? You know where it hurts them the most? Right in the pocket. When they pay up $3 million, $4 million to my client, Baca is having secret meetings up there in his high castle, wondering how he could change that. Okay? Because when we take millions of dollars out of his pocket, things change. People start listening. And we can't reach that result unless you all complain. Yes, right back there. Sorry, sir.
Yes, recently in our city, a few months ago, we had some hate crimes.
Yes.
Allegedly.
Right, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Right.
Which we find that is not so true. But in the instance of understanding what they allege to be, could you elaborate and tell us the definition of such hate crimes and bring that to understanding of what the penalties are in the city and define what a civil rights issue happens after a hate crime?
Right. Well, a hate crime is, first of all, it's a violation of federal law. You could be charged. If you attack somebody and harm somebody in a violent crime based on his color, race, ethnicity, gender, these could be very, very serious crimes. And there's separate charges. There's California statutes that have hate crimes, and there are federal statutes that have hate crimes. And you could be charged additional penalties for those hate crimes. Now, I don't know if you're talking about hate citizen on citizen, or are you talking about law enforcement on citizen?
Well, it was construed to be out of some isolated incidents.
Yes.
That it proceeded to be that, but the interpretation of what it was not really what it was actually to be.
Okay.
What we believe, as a result of the communities involved in inspecting, is that there was really gang enhancement issues.
Right, right.
That got interpreted to be that.
Right.
So when you have writers and sheriffs writing certain things like that to incite and possibly bring forth other things that are not there, what would you do as a policing agency or someone over that to decipher what really happened?
So are you saying that the police are sort of putting fuel in the fire?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, and starting these gang wars?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And you want to know how to stop that?
Absolutely.
Community, you could stop it. Those parents could stop it. Who's got control of these kids? Who's talking to these kids? Where are their moms and dads? Where are their uncles? Where's the community in this? It doesn't take much. You need family to sit down with their kid and be like, listen, stupid, stop going outside and gangbanging, stay home, get a job. And it's really that simple. There's no control on that.
Half the parents is on crack and on alcohol. Come on. Half of them don't have jobs. Come on now. Keep it 100.
You're gonna have a percentage. You're gonna have a small. You're gonna have a small percentage of that. I'm talking about the majority.
A lot of percentage of that. Do you know how many kids in the city of Compton that are in the system that are lost?
I do know.
Because their parents were on drugs and using drugs.
Yes.
And when you have parents that are doing that, getting high all the time and kicking it, I go put my mother's mini dress on and walk out the house going to school. And do you think she's gonna say something? No, she's high. Let's keep it 100. I am so tired of coming here with this bull. Let me tell you something else why my hand is up. Why he said what he said, Mike, they have 2 men arrested with their pictures in the paper for the hate crime on 153rd Street. I have the newspaper at home, and you know what they said? They didn't want no black people living next door to them. Well, hallelujah. Do you know, over there at 155 off of Central, it's always been Hispanic and black, and I'm talking ever since I've been a little child. And all of a sudden today, I don't want you living next door to me, so I'm gonna run you and your family out. No. They got the 2 boys, they got the paper. If I had known y'all was gonna talk about that, I would have brought the guys that they arrested for that. This city of Compton has got on my nerve. That's why I have not been coming, because I do not see nothing. These kids are not stopped dying, and you guys can't stop them from killing them. Who's gonna stop them? You say the police come to your house, they tear your whole pad up. Looking for one what? One parolee. Why you tear my door off, mister? Why you cut the mister? Why you break my glass? Why you break my mirror? And then you guys don't want to replace it. It takes you forever and a day to replace them people's stuff. And that is against the law. All that stuff that goes on in the city of Compton, that these people do with this power tripping, is against the law and is against moral. You say, yeah, I'm a working parent, I go to work, I watch my kids here. But when you watch your kids, what they're doing at school, smoking weed with their friends. Down in the ditch, smoking weed with their friends. Yeah, I watch my kids too. Well, come on, keep it 100 now. You cannot keep your eye on your kids 24/7, 24/8, every day. And that's a
You can't, but you could raise them from an early age. Once the plane knows how to fly, it flies straight at some
Hold
point.
up. You can raise them from here
Right?
to do the right thing.
Right.
But you got peer pressure in the street that take your baby.
But if the root is strong, the tree will be strong, and that's the point. You plant the root strong.
You ain't hear me. The root can be strong as ever in a day. But when peer pressure comes, and they gonna beat you up every day, and they gonna fuck you up every day, what you gonna do? You gonna, oh, well, I gotta go,
Excuse
it
me.
is what it is.
I believe that if we're following the agenda, this is our featured
speaker.
Okay.
And we have completely gone off the subject.
Okay.
This gentleman has his own message to give us. You speaking to him as if he lives here in Compton?
No, you don't
As
live
a-
in Compton. They have one about living in Compton.
Okay, but but he's the featured speaker from Los Angeles. Let's let him go ahead with his presentation.
And let me go home, because I'm tired of coming down here, and every time I get up, I have to get cut off.
No. It's not a matter. We're being rude to our guest speaker.
No, he know me. He know I ain't being rude. He know us. He know how we get down, and he know how we keep it down. We try to be 100, and we try to get some matters solved that have not got solved, and he's trying to help us.
Can I
And
have
I thank him for that.
Ashley chime in here? I would love to hear what Ashley said, if that's okay.
Yes. I'll say next.
Yeah.
Okay, so as you mentioned earlier, I go to USC, and I'm throwing out this idea just to kind of hopefully branch out and see if we can do it at other schools. What my best friend started, his name is Jason Sneed at USC, and I work with him, is we realized that it's bigger than just the parents' fault, and that they have to provide for their children.
Thank you.
It's not just a black and white situation, no pun intended, but that it also has to be with the community. So what we did basically is we have this outreach program, and there's a bunch of us that mentor middle school children and high schoolers. And what we do once a month, every Saturday, is we have big events. So for example, last month, we had actresses come, and we had actors come and film people, and we had them talk to the students, educate them on it, get them passionate about it. We broke into groups and did music videos and movies and got them excited about that and put like positive energy into that. This next month, we're going to do something with law. We're going to have attorneys come, hopefully RJ can make it, I haven't talked to him about it yet. We're going to do a mock trial. We're going to tell them about their rights. We're going to tell them about what's wrong, what's right with the law, what you can do about it. And hopefully in the future, after listening to RJ and the server here, we can do something with police officers and have black and white police officers come and talk to them and put a face to behind the monster, whatever, that they've seen come into their homes when they've been young children. So the point of me saying all of this is just to let you know that there are parts of the community that are trying to work on it, like myself and other students. And if you come around other students that go to other schools, I think UCLA is doing this as well, tell them about what we do and spread the word, because we are trying to address this. And like you said, it's not that easy, and there's a lot of different ways to address it. So just a kind of note of encouragement.
Yeah, that's true. And that's true. And I agree with what you said, ma'am. Because you have a lot of kids that have a lot of talent in all over. I mean, you have some that dance, you have some that sing, you have some that does a lot, but because their parents don't have the money, or don't want to give up the money because they drinking or they smoking and whatever, then the kids never get to express, the stuff that they want to do, or how they can sing, or how they can dance, and all that. And I agree to that because I come from a family of dancers, and I understand that. You know, but Miss Esther hurt my feelings. But Miss Esther, I'm sorry, and I didn't say nothing to be ugly to you. But I'm here because I am so tired.
That's why I'm trying to help the parents with their talented young people, because I work free after my school day, teaching dance, teaching drama. We have, but we need more. There's educators here giving their time.
Yes, but you don't have the parents, the parents explain.
We have, no, when those kids go back with a message. They go back with a message.
That's the part that makes me mad. The parents don't want to pray.
Well, look, darling, we'll let this gentleman speak right now.
Yeah, I'm mad.
Yeah, I just wanted to address the fact that we have established that there's two different types of communities. Homeowners that live in communities and police service to those homeowners is really.
Can you get a microphone? I don't think anybody hear me. Go ahead.
We have two different types of communities, and we haven't addressed the difference between the homeowners who get excellent service from the police department because they're all homeowners. Well, I'm speaking sociologically.
Okay, so just in general.
And as compared to communities that rent their property, people are coming in and out. The police department doesn't feel like particularly they owe anything to those renters because they don't really stay around long enough to know the police department or to contribute to the community. So we have two different communities, and we're not addressing the one community, and that's the community of the homeowners. So we never address the fact, in reality, that most of our communities are people who will come in and go out of the community.
That's an interesting point. Very interesting.
That's true. That's true. I agree with that, sir. And I agree with that 100%. But then you also have to know, we have in our community, in the city of Compton, we have Afro-American, we have Hispanics, we have Filipinos. Also, we have Koreans and all of that. But now, do you know that the Koreans don't want to socialize with us? Why?
Please let us get
Oh, well, let me get this meeting on and go home. Let me go home. I should have went on to my
You
job.
do what you like.
Well, you know I do.
But we want everybody. We want everybody to get something. So be cool. You like you do.
Does anybody have questions? I'm sorry, I saw some hands fly up. Yes, sir.
Going back to the issue.
Yes, I'm sorry, I got your question.
That situation,
Yes.
you know, it's covered in 422.7 of the penal code.
And that's what we need to kind of define, because when you get the writer writing certain things in the paper that would incite and to make things out to be a financial gain for the sheriff department, then you find out what the real matter is.
Who are you referring to?
Well, the same situation that was in the paper. Because
which paper, out of curiosity?
actually the LA Times. Yeah, we got the excerpts that were said, but what I'm saying to you is that people were coming out of other areas that they arrested, not the people inside that was living. Okay, they alleged, or it was said, that a man got beaten in the head with a pipe. We have yet to see that. Whereas the hospital report, someone hit you in the head with a pipe, certainly you would go to the hospital, correct? For some form of evaluation. So what I'm trying to say to you is that people can come in and incite things just by the fact of them saying things but not proving it. What we did, we went into the community and investigated community-wise. See, I don't see that part coming, and no one else has said that, nor anyone else did it. So when you go talk to the people and find out what's going on, then you find a whole different perspective. So that's what we're trying to say. A lot of people incite whether they do the investigation and get involved. So when you're just talking, you got to get out there on the streets and walk. See, I'm not talking about it from a perspective of just talking. I'm talking about the perspective of what the walking did. I did that on Super Bowl Sunday. Me. So I know what happened and what didn't happen. So when you got people that come in the city and get in the paper and promote stuff that's not there, then you got to deal with it from the perspective of who's telling the truth. Is the writer? Can we trust the message from the messenger? So that's what I'm saying.
Did you try to contact the editor?
Absolutely.
And did they come?
No.
Why?
It's under investigation.
There's a gentleman here and there's a lady here. I'm sorry. They take her. Go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead.
I'm Emily Howard, an educator in this
Holyfield?
I'm Emily Hart Hollyfield, an educator who has retired here in the community with 40 years of education in the Unified School District and also 20 years as a policymaker here. And from my observation, everything has been said here tonight is correct. But the problem really is, when you get down to the really nitty-gritty, is we have never said we have 100,000 people here yet. But the problem is, it's estimated to be 98,000 people. I've heard that for 4 or 5 years. It has never reached 100,000 people, yet you have 11,000 gang members here. Now that's the problem that we really should be addressing.
Thank you.
Because what we do, we are comparing Compton with Torrance and the other communities, but they don't have 11,000 gang members in their community, less than 100,000 people. As a matter of fact, I bet those communities do not even have 2,000 gang members. So what we are, as Compton, and this gentleman said, more or less a transit center. You'll find parents moving in here this month. Election is coming up. They'll go into the hood houses, and they'll stay there 3 or 4 months, moved in 3 or 4 months in advance before election. They'll vote. And I guarantee you, 2 or 3 months you go back by that same house, no one lives there. No one lives there. So we have transit that moves from Compton to Watts, and from Watts back to Compton. From Compton to Watts, and when I was teaching, I had one parent moved from the neighborhood where the kid was in my classroom 3 times in 1 year. And it so happened that I was the teacher the 3 times. I had the vacancy and I got that same kid. She moved from Compton, she went to Long Beach. She left from Long Beach, went to Paramount. And she left from Paramount and came back to Compton. But the idea is, it seems like to me she liked Compton the best, because she spent most of her time in Compton. So I think if we really should get down to addressing how many gang bangers do we have in Compton. Now I know the sheriff knows where they are, because this statistic came through the sheriff's mouth. They said that they had 11,000 gangbangers here. Now, that's enough to scare anybody. You got less than 100,000 people with 11,000 gangbangers? What are they doing? How are we addressing the problem for them to survive? How do we address the problem for them to stop killing up each other and harassing their own parents? The parents have become victims of their own children. They are afraid of these gangbangers. Not necessarily the kid, but the kid's friends that hang out with them.
And you know, there's another victim, the innocent person whose profile is a gang member just because it's black. That's who I represent. These kids that get beat up because the sheriffs think they're gang members, they got the shaved head, they're driving the car, they're just regular folk. But they're being profiled as gang members, so they're collateral consequence. They're the true victims also. And it's awful that the parents are being victimized, but can you imagine your son spending a year in jail because he was profiled? And because the police officers beat him up? What are they going to do after they beat him up, by the way? Say, I'm sorry? No, they're going to arrest him and falsely accuse him of crimes they didn't commit. And that's awful, and that's what's going on. And again, I'm not critiquing everybody and saying you're all bad parents. That's not what I'm saying. But there's a combination of attitude, parenting, community awareness, complaining. It's the totality of everything that creates this cure for this problem. In the long run, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a long time. I mean, if you look at the civil rights record of America, it has gotten better since the 60s. It's not that people aren't being hosed down in the streets. Dogs aren't biting people's legs. It's gotten a lot better. I mean, that picture that you saw of the 1969 riots, it's gotten a lot better. And that's what's going to happen. It's progressively going to get better with knowledge, awareness, community, policing, parenting, and so forth. It's the combination of everything, I think.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
1965.
65, sorry.
August 11th, 1965.
Yes. got a question for you. Are you related to the boxer, or you look exactly like him?
I get like the first cousins.
Is he really?
Yes.
Exact same. Big fan, by the way.
Good evening. Most of you all know who I am. My name is William Kemp. And I've been listening, and at first I was a little thrown off by what you were saying initially as a defense attorney, but I understand that's your job, because it sounded initially when I walked in the room, and I did come in late, as if you were giving parents of children who do crimes an excuse. Because one of the biggest problems in our community is what someone said earlier, is that kids don't have activities.
Right.
Because when parents are working, if you're not at home to watch your kid, the only people hanging out in the neighborhood is those that didn't make it out. And that's who your child is left hanging out with. So you have to have activities to keep them busy. That's what keeps them out of the street. But another thing is that if you know your child is involved in crime, you can't allow him to have a house to hide in. You have to put him out. You have to put him out there on the streets, because if he chooses to be a criminal, he's hurting the whole community. Not just your house, he's tearing down our community. So you have to put him out there where he wants to be. My mother raised 3 college graduates in this community because she said she was not going to hide any criminals in her house. She was going to tell on us if we were going to be involved in crime. So initially, and after I heard your whole conversation, I understand you were speaking to parents whose kids have been wrongly accused. But for those kids that are involved in crime, don't hide them. Put them out, because it affects all of us in our community. Compton was not always a bad community. Mr. Holyfield, you know my grandparents. I'm a 3rd generation Compton resident. I come from 2 generations of educators in this community. And the way they solved crime in my family, they would tell on you. Okay? So nobody wanted to be involved because they were going to put you out. We have to stop hiding these kids, because they make it hard for all of us. Thank you.
Just really quickly, what he said was interesting, because telling on these kids is sort of like the community being one big family, looking out for one another.
Neighborhood watch used to be.
Neighborhood watch, exactly. So your neighborhood watching your own family, your own children, and that's where it starts. But going back to what I do, should something bad happen to your family, because you're profiled, because the police officers see you in a different light, they think that you're the enemy, you've got to protect your family. Don't speak to the police. Gather, collect information. Don't let your kids speak to the police. And again, get a lawyer. And hopefully, if you do file the complaint, a lawyer like me gets their hands on that information, and a lawyer like me makes sure that that cop doesn't go in your neighborhood again. One quick thing I got to tell you, what's interesting, all these cases that we've won, once we sue them, all these millions and millions of dollars that Bach is paying these people for reparations for being beaten up, you would think that these police officers would have gotten fired. But what's interesting is, not only did they not get fired, they got promotions. And some of these people that beat up these kids become sergeants, chiefs, and in the worst case scenario, if you yell loud enough, the community yells loud enough, they won't fire you, they'll send them out to Lancaster, okay? Where they beat up other young kids. So it's an epidemic that goes in circles, and I think that needs to be addressed, yes?
Yeah, the thing we were talking about with the LAPD, just since you brought that up, is the California peace officers for the right. We got to learn how to not only maybe revitalize it, reorganize it, and stipulate that these officers who go out and commit these excessive forces, that we take their peace bail bond. Because if we can take that bond, they can't go nowhere else and get bonded to policing. So if we can get a legislative action, USC, enacted so that we can get that thing, that's what protects them. They run behind that, and that's when they start hiding and go into other areas of police.
Right.
And so that's why we need to address that issue, because when they start getting, if they get over 4 or 5 excessive forces, they obviously taking steroids, got bad alcoholic issues, got bad homes, they are violent, they're like animals. We had one guy come to the council and say, animals, straight up. And some of them are because they get out and want to fight. So we have to find a way, USC, to create legislative action to pierce that Board of Regents review. And so that they have no way to hide. Once they are exposed, that's what we can do.
You know what you need? You need an independent body review, not the police policing their own.
Right.
Because obviously, if I'm in the police department and you beat up somebody, I'm not going to rat you out and find you liable. You need an independent governing board to do these reviews so that the quality of it is accurate and true. And not just a rubber stamp or a cover-up.
Right.
And that's a big problem. All the police departments, they do their own internal investigations. And they're crap. They always justify the force. Oh, it's justified. Yeah, he put a pipe to his head, but it was justified. Yeah, he shot him 8 times. It was justified. You need an independent review board. And that's where USC comes in, I think.
Okay, Mr. Ernest.
Yeah.
I just want to share a couple of comments, and I want to ask a question.
Yes.
One is, I do appreciate what you're sharing in terms of coaching folks on how to interact with the police, because there is a protocol you have to have in dealing with those folks. But in recognition of what the young lady did say at the back, as a comment, and for our upcoming prosecutor, the reality of it is that there is a deliberate maintenance of 2 different communities. It is. And I'm not letting the parents in our community off the hook about being responsible for their parents. But, you know, I'll give you, for instance, last month we had a meeting and talking about a gentleman who was shot by the police. Listen to this, 7 times in the back. And no one could remember ever when a officer involved in a questionable shooting in the county of Los Angeles was ever charged for criminal activity. That's pitiful. That's pitiful. But we know that it can happen because in the county that's just next door, a homeless man was beat and killed by the police. 3 police officers, 3 of them, lost their jobs and weren't charged with improper conduct. They were charged with crimes such as manslaughter and attempted murder.
First of all, that homeless man wasn't homeless. He was a son of a former sheriff. And that's why those cops got taken down.
Whatever
he wasn't a nobody, he was a somebody.
I won't debate that with you.
Yeah.
But the fact of it is,
right.
It happened.
Right.
The fact of it is, it happened. And I'll just
But
say...
he didn't have a powerful dad. They would have never got prosecuted.
That may be true. But see, unfortunately, to go with your point, see, there's no powerful people in our community. There are no power. We are people of color, and we don't have any power. That's why the police do and act how they act and say what they say, because it's the truth. And I'm going to say this one last comment, then I'm going to ask you a question. What I do to get a reality of how the police behave in our community, and especially when there was a rash of these women, old women being shot by the police, and she had a screwdriver and I feared for life. I do it like this. I flip it over. Take a 6'2" black man, 310 pounds, who can lift 400 pounds, has a gun on his side that can shoot 14 shots, a stick and a pistol that'll shoot 50,000 votes, and have him shoot an 80-year-old white woman and say he feared for his life. Doesn't that sound ridiculous? And what do you think would happen to that man? So I'm just saying that to say this. There's 2 different communities. There's 2 different realities. And unfortunately, it's just a fact of life. But my question is this. We often hear about the rights of the police and the rights of the citizen when they're stopped. And I always wonder why the sheriff, as a routine, when they stop someone, go through their car. It seems to be understanding that there has to be a probable cause for them to search a car, but it never, ever fails. Every time I see them with a car to the center, they are all to the person's car. What's the legality of that?
Well, the legality is they're not allowed to go in your trunk of the car unless they have your consent. They could do a search of the car if they feel that there's weapons in the car for their safety. But that's so subjective. It's very subjective. But the trunk should, no police officer should ever go inside a trunk. Whenever my clients say that they gave consent, I say, why? And they say, well, what was I supposed to say, no?
I don't know if they give
People are scared to say no to police officers. I don't want you to search my car.
Well, if you do, you're going to create a problem. Ain't afraid.
Well, you know what? Let me tell you something. So at some point, you have to stand up and say no. And if they say, well, you know I can go get a warrant, say, go get the warrant. I'm staying right here. But it's fear. That's what it comes down to. All my clients say it's fear.
They will impound your car.
So let them impound it.
But now, wait a minute.
This is something. And a lot of the citizens does not know that these sheriffs in this city do not pay or use our city toll. Anybody can come in this city and toll without a license, but yet they are charging the residents of this city an arm and a leg for a license to tow cars, but the sheriff does not use them. If you get your car, you got to go out down there in Orange County to get your car back. You didn't know that.
It's like a target because it's primarily a low-income community, and let's just add an extra, more agony to their.
Yeah, but why are they taking money in another city out of this whole city?
Because the other city is making the money.
And that's because they don't care, and that is their attitude. If you tell a policeman that you can't go in my trunk, you got a problem out there.
What would be the problem if you said no? What would they do?
Oh, well,
you say no, and then what? What are you going to say? I mean, there's only so many people they would meet. Eventually, they're not lost.
It really sounds ridiculous, but a reality, every black kid who is responsibly tutored by their parent is going to tell them whatever the police tell you, you do. I'm about 2 years younger than that gentleman over there who has that fine plan for the policing. Never in my life, even as a grown man, have I ever asked a police officer, what did you stop me for? Really? Never. And I never intend to. Wow. And I had reasons to be stopped before, but now I'm a pretty straight-laced individual. But even now, if a police officer were to stop me, my whole comment, good afternoon, officer. Sir, the reason why I stopped you so, oh, I didn't know my light was out. Thank you, officer. I needed this ticket. I'm going to get it fixed right away. Wow. That's the protocol.
In fact, it seems as if the police, once they enter or come to your window, they already have this idea or an assumption that you've done something wrong. I was coming home from school with my CSUDA sweatshirt on, and the police pulled me over. Yes, I did do it like pause at the stop sign and keep going, and didn't really acknowledge it. And when he pulls me over, I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do? Now I'm not used to getting pulled over pulled over by the police, but I just knew to just basically tell the truth. So he looked at me and said, "Where are you coming from?" I got my sweatshirt on. I said, "I'm coming from school." He says, "Oh." And he just looked at me in my eye, dead in my eye, gave me eye contact and said, "You're not lying, are you?" So there's an assumption that we lie.
What was the nationality of this officer?
White, with beautiful blue eyes.
Did that help? The blue eyes help?
Well, what I did notice, because I'm a behavioral science, what I did notice from the police officer was just that he had in his mind that she's probably lying. Let me see where's she going, what is she doing. Thank God I had on my t-shirt, but even though my sweatshirt with my school on it, and me telling him that I was coming from school didn't really matter, So the fact that I was maybe driving a truck in black, I don't know. But he assumed that I was lying.
That's exactly.
When they get this
presumed guilty in their minds.
My name is Benjamin Holyfield, and I've resided in the city for over 50 years. So when I got here, they was burning crosses and putting hoses in mailboxes and that type of thing. Now, another thing, along with being pulled over, I'm not pulled over that much or anything like that. But normally, if we as a people are going down the freeway and one of us is pulled over, we slow up. If we're doing 60 and 70, we're getting about 40. So you've already got a ticket. You got a mental ticket. And then again, anytime they pull our kids over, they're searching. That's a given.
And are you telling your kids to do that, to just do as the police officer says? If he wants to open your trunk, open your trunk?
Yeah. It was just stated.
Well, what's stopping the police officer from finding something in the
It
car?
was just
and saying,
stated.
do that.
You're exactly
Why
right.
would you let your son expose him to that?
Hopefully, the courts will prevail and you'll be
That's the
able to-
wrong attitude. Hopefully it's not a preventative measure. Do not let the police go in your trunks.
Sir, you have been trained.
Yes.
You are very good, believe me, at your job. You are very good, and you have a lot to understand about conflict. And the ghetto, and we're going to help teach you that part. We'll teach us, and then
Well,
we'll
maybe
teach
there
you.
needs to be some sort of community training regarding this to
That's
go
right.
over and over again.
That's exactly, and that's what Mr. Ron was talking
So they all
about.
learn how to say no.
We all know, it's
See.
people outside the community who don't know
Now, the last
the
thing-
competence as far as what people in competence.
The last thing, yeah, you see, we need, you know what we have to do? It's very simple. We're not communicating. If you can't communicate, you can't operate. We don't communicate with the outside world enough. Matter of fact, we don't even have a newspaper now. Now, the last thing, in terms of towing. There's a business on Compton Boulevard in Asia with a tow company from Southgate. And they have a person in that lot that's a spotter. And they tow out thousands of dollars every day to Southgate. They tow out so many cars until they line them up on the back street. And then they bring in a big truck to take them away. And not long ago, they towed away a lawyer's car. Oh yes, from Huntington Beach. And he stood around for hours to check that out. I never found out the conclusion. But we do have it. It is being looked into as far as that tow business being in the city of Compton. Because within walking distance, within about 500 feet or less, there's a tow company. Thank you.
Come back here.
First of all, forgive me for my voice, I have laryngitis. I'm not a kid. I own a cleaning service, and I had some employees that couldn't make it to work. So I go one night to clean this building. So I come home, I'm dirty, I'm in a t-shirt and a pair of working pants, and I'm coming down Willowbrook. Cop pulls me over. Well, I did a California stop. I saw that they had somebody stopped on the side street, so I kind of went past the stop sign. He got in his car and told me to go through the sign. So I go through the sign. He says, "Why did you run the light?" And I said, "You can give me an intersection ticket, but you told me to run the light." So he says, "Oh, you're a street lawyer. Get out the car." And I said, "For what?" He says, "Because I told you to." And I said, "Well, what did I do? You're going to write me a ticket." He says, "Is this your vehicle?" I said, I don't have any warrants, any tickets. This vehicle is registered to the same address on my driver's license. So he made me get out of the car anyhow and put me in the back seat of his car. And then asked, could he search my car? And I said, "Well, what do you want to search my car for?" He says that they were looking for a vehicle that had performed a crime that looked like my vehicle. I said,
That's awful.
Hold on. Then he said he wanted to search my trunk. I said, "For what?" He said that either I could go downtown and they were going to tow my vehicle and search my trunk, or I can let him search my trunk right here. Of course, I had nothing to hide. I said, "Go ahead and search the trunk." But I sat in the back of a car for an hour and a half. I have no warrant,
Okay, but
no
can I
ticket.
stop you? You said, "Of course I have nothing to hide." It's not that you have something to hide. It's that you shouldn't be trusting those guys looking in your car. I've had clients that have claimed that rock cocaine was planted on it. I've proven that in trial.
I was in the
Cops
back
planted
seat.
cocaine on people.
I was in the back seat of
So
the
they
car.
could solidify their bust. Never do that. That is dangerous. You're lucky because you're older, but if you were 18 or 19 and they thought you were a punk, they could have punked you out. And a cop that is that dirty enough to lie and make up some generalization and say, "Well, your car was involved in something," is a cop you shouldn't be trusting. And what you should do is, right after that's done, take that guy's name and his badge, file a complaint in his police department, so that if some young kid is unfortunate enough to come against those cops, we could call you. And you could testify at the kid's trial about what they did to you, about the fact that they put you in the trunk for no reason. That's what I'm talking about. That's just absolutely horrible, and I'm sorry to hear the mentality in this community is
No,
like
it's
that.
not the mentality. It's a reality.
But we have to change our reality.
But see, here's the thing. Here's the thing. And bless your heart.
Mentality is part of the reality.
But there's two mentalities that work here. It's the mentality of the police, and it's the mentality of the community. The community has got to survive. And it's great, and I appreciate you saying, no, don't do that, no. But do you know how many of our kids would be in jail? You know how many of us would be on the bus because now, let's hear me out. Whatever the cop chooses to say, and I'm just telling you.
And that's fine, you get a lawyer, you sue the rest, and that's how it
Who's got
starts.
money to get a lawyer?
There's pro bono attorneys, I'm a pro bono attorney, you can call me.
But see, the reason why I'm saying this is that it's just a simple, listen. I've got a son. And I personally, I don't choose to use the word gangbanger. I personally don't choose to use it because I've had 4 black boys who've been teenagers, and if you didn't know them, you would, well, those little gangbangers, look at them, they got, but I know they weren't. I know they weren't. I'm not, but listen, my son left the house 5 minutes going to work in his guard uniform, called me 3 minutes, Daddy, guess what? What, son? The police just stopped me and threw all this. Every night, the police got to stop him within a mile of the house. These police see his car, they know his car. Right. I mean, but this is the reality of our black children. Fortunately, my son is clean. That's why he can get stopped every night and still be able to go on about his business, come back home. Right. Thank God he doesn't have a warrant.
But what happens when he gets stopped by a dirty cop? Then what's your son gonna do?
I'm not going to call any cops dirty. I just think that my son is clean. Maybe some of the cops that stop my son are dirty, but I'm just telling you the reality. And this, you're right. Now you said the truth. Living in our communities is a risk. And one thing I've always advocated, the police always want us to come to their training center and see what they have to go through. I'm inviting them to come spend a month down here and live down here and see what we have to go through with them policing us. And I'm a responsible citizen. I'm not trying to knock anybody in the head. Okay? And I talk to these little kids. Hey, pull your pants up, do this. Go enroll in the school and do something. Miss Esther's there working after school. And these kids, I'm going to tell you something about the children in this community. They all deserve awards for living under the stress that they have to live under. They really do.
I agree with you.
They really do. And the fact that they can still laugh and make jokes and be nice to each other, you know, all this separation of the races, we don't have it in the neighborhood. Really, we don't. I work in the school. These black kids and Mexican kids, they're boyfriends and girlfriends, but it's the system that promotes this division. Oh, there's a hate crime on 155th Street. Give me a break. Nobody talked about what good they do over on that street. Those black people and Mexicans have lived over there for forever. So a couple kids had a fight.
And that's what the gentleman back there was referring to.
And do you publish the action?
What?
And do you publish the action that your community took?
Well, okay. Let me kind of spin backwards. In terms of the answer to your question regarding names of officers, the gentleman in the back row is accurate. In California, there's a legislative scheme called the Peace Officer Bill of Rights. And the Peace Officer Bill of Rights makes it very difficult for publication of the names of law enforcement personnel who are involved in a shooting or something of that nature. It's virtually impossible. So our office, we have all that information, but we can't share that particular type of information. Like you come to me and says, hey, Deputy X, what else has he done in the past? I can't tell you that, right? And nor can even the Sheriff's Department disclose that publicly, or they'd be in violation of the POVR.
Okay, two more questions.
Sure.
The first one is, do you publish the actions that you take?
Yeah, well, it's not the actions that we take, it's the actions which the department took. So, for example, you would see, for example, there's a deputy-involved shooting. We do our own review of what we think the quality of the investigation was. We also disclose if, for example, the department found the policy in policy or out of policy, right? The department makes a finding through their executive force review committee, in policy, out of policy, what are tactical or training issues, the whole gamut, right? In our reports, we say whether or not we agreed or disagreed with those findings. There are times when we disagree with the findings, and then there's a certain procedure we follow up the flagpole, and sometimes all the way up to the sheriff, when we strongly believe this is an instance where discipline should be imposed for these are the reasons why, and so far the lower committee disagreed with us, with our opinion. We want to basically appeal it up the flagpole.
Right. Now my last question.
Sure.
If, let's say you have an officer that every year is beating the hell out of somebody, you're not able to publish his name, but for the community, what is the difference between him and someone that commits assault and battery? You can publish his name, why can't that officer's name be published?
Well, if that officer were charged with assault and battery, yes, you could. Because now he's being criminally charged in the public court, and now his name is public. Right, and that's the distinction. Of course, that ties into the issue the gentleman over there made, that it is unusual when officers are, or law enforcement is charged with on-duty conduct. Relatively recently, a sheriff's deputy, former sheriff's deputy, was charged with some on-duty conduct. And his case is pending. And, you know, but that was an occurrence which doesn't take place very often. Thank you.
So in this case here, in the Trinidad case, we do have the officer's name. So we thank the court department for allowing that to happen, because we think it's important that that information gets out, because sometimes these officers are running and we don't know what they may do in order to not disclose to us the true nature of what they're going to be doing next. I think it needs to be changed, added from that list right over there. That definitely needs to be disclosed by OIR and everyone else.
Well, if I did, I'd be violating the law. So if you believe that police officers' Bill of Rights should be changed, yes, by all means, and which of course ties me in, and I've heard a lot of really great conversations tonight. And you know, I come here about 3 times a year, as each of us attorneys takes our turn. And I really enjoy coming here because I hear such a full range of conversation. If you don't mind indulging me for a couple of minutes, I'd like to make a couple comments about some of the things that I heard. First of all, great presentation in terms of what people's rights are when either you're stopped by law enforcement or law enforcement comes to your house. I want to keep something in mind though. When law enforcement comes to your house, you talked about them having a warrant, right? So the police can come into your house really under 3 or 4 conditions. Number 1 is you give consent for them to come in. You give consent to them to search your house. The second is they have a search warrant which is issued by a judge, and so they are warranted by the court to search your house. The third one is an exigent circumstance. For example, hot pursuit. You're in your house, there's a police chase going on, or a bank robbery just occurred, and a guy goes running into your house, which does happen, or comes running home, and maybe somebody's related to you, or he's boarding in your house, or whatever, and the police are in hot pursuit. Those are the third circumstance, but not a typical one. There's a fourth one, though, you really need to keep in mind, and that's really important for keeping in mind who is staying in your house, and that's the probation condition. Very often, a condition of probation is a waiver by the person who's taking the plea deal, a waiving his right to reasonable searches and seizures. In other words, this person, his vehicle, his residence can be searched anytime, day or night, by law enforcement with or without probable cause. So if that person is living in your house, right? That's his residence, and it's your residence too? Well, guess what? Under most conditions, that means your house can be searched also. Now, not your own bedroom, right? And when they come inside, they have to be reasonable. They can only reasonably search where the common areas or that person's own bedroom. But you really need to keep that in mind. So if you're having somebody who's living in your house as a probationer, you have a right to be informed. You have a right to know, hey, wait a minute, what are the conditions of your probation? You know? And if you're not reporting, what's going to happen? Well, guess what? If he doesn't report your probation, they're going to come looking for you. and they come looking for him, they're going to come looking in your house if that's an address that he gave. So please be informed. Complaints. I'm going to piggyback on that one. If you believe that the deputy conducted himself in an unprofessional manner, in a disrespectful manner, in a discourteous manner, if you believe that he stopped you without reasonable suspicion, if you believe that he put you into the backseat of his radio car without proper suspicion, make a complaint. It doesn't cost anything. You have a right to go down to the station. You have a right to call the station. You have a right to make that complaint. It's called a service comment report. File that form, and the department, that station is obligated to do an inquiry. Sometimes those inquiries lead to investigations, where that captain looks at an inquiry, or his lieutenant, and says, I think there's something to it. Now, your question is going to be, well, how do I know that they're going to actually follow through and do the right thing? You know what? There are no guarantees, right? But this is what's so important to me, why from OIR's point of view that's so important. When an incident takes place, for example, a deputy-involved shooting, our office has access to the department's personnel database of their past. And a deputy-involved shooting occurs, like I'm going to be on call starting Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. for the next week. Something happens that week after that, 24/7, I'm going there at 2 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If it's down in Carson or up in Palmdale, I'm going to that shooting scene. The next morning, I get back to my office, what's the very first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to pull up those involved deputies' personnel file, so I can see what's been going on. Prior shootings, lots of force, complaints, founded investigations where they've been found in violation of policy before. That's what I look for. So I look for complaints by citizens, by residents, to say, hey, this deputy, you know, he put me in the backseat of that radio car. He had no right to do that. Hey, he was injurious to me. He had no right to do that, and I'm going to complain about it, right? And if you feel that after you make a complaint, you get a retaliation against you, go back and make another complaint. Because I'll find about it, and my other attorneys will know about it. We may not be following that deputy that particular second, maybe a year from now or 2 years from now. Well, let me tell you, that track record of seeing it is important to us. Not having a track record is important to us. Having a track record so red flags go off, critical.
That's where it gets difficult, because we hear that a lot. We always encourage folks to go complain. Two things. One is that they feel when they get there, they feel they're being discouraged. And the second thing is, well, they're not going to do anything anyway. What would you say to those folks?
Well, that's my next segue. I heard a sentence said in here, which made me sit up and take notice. And the phrase was, there are no powerful people in our community. And I was thinking, what in the world are you talking about, sir? With all due respect. You have power as an individual, you have power of a community, you have power as an ethnicity, you have power as citizens of Compton, as citizens of California, as a resident of California. You just have power, right? And you can either let the powerful take that power away from you or not, right? That's your choice. And yeah, there's a traffic stop going on, and yes, he wants to search your trunk. Yes, he wants to put in the backseat of that police car, but you still have a right to go back and make a complaint about that, right? And you're only as weak as you allow yourself to be weak. And if they're going to make a complaint, you have a right to do that. I don't know how it's going to turn out. The department may look at it and say, no, it wasn't policy. They may talk to the deputy and say, well, here are my reasons why. You know what? There actually was a silver Charger which involved in a 211 earlier that day with chrome rims. And guess what I saw go through the intersection? It was a silver Charger. So that is why I stopped that vehicle, right? And so I look at that, right? OIR attorney, I look at that after the fact. I see the explanation. I may see the report of that robbery and say, okay, I understand why I did that. But in some other instance, I may see just the opposite. I may see some excuse given, yeah, I fit a profile. Well, why in the world were you following the car for a whole mile? Because I just heard a citizen's story when he called me on the telephone and he told me what happened. When I look at the fact of where I know your radio car was 5 minutes ago and where it was 5 minutes later, his story makes more sense, the citizen's story makes more sense to me than your story as deputy. But I don't know that going in, right? Because one of the hardest things about the job that we do is that we're not there, right? Even if I get a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning of a shooting just took place somewhere in the middle of the county, when I get there, it's already over, right? I don't know what happened. I can only rely upon the evidence that comes in, the statements made by witnesses. That's what I can rely on. So please, you are as powerful as a lot of powerful people are sitting here right here. And you can exert that power in many different ways. You can exert it on your street like Mr. Taylor is talking about. You can exert it by telling that young man to pull his pants up. You can exert it by not taking crap from a deputy who wants to put you in the back seat and making that complaint because you deserve to make that complaint. You don't deserve to take that if you thought it was unjustified. And it's not his job to tell you whether it was justified or not. It's your right to make that complaint, right? And let them figure it out afterwards. Let us figure it out afterwards. So the other thing is, somebody else talked about, I think it was you, Mrs. Holyfield, but somebody else talked about the damaging your house or your property, breaking your mirror, breaking your glass when they come into the house. Well, file that claim, okay? File that claim within 180 days. File that claim. They will look at it. Again, just so you know, every single month, we're assigned in our office different units. So, for example, I have South LA. Every month, I get all the claims which came in against deputies in that station, all lawsuits, correct? I'm always aware of all active internal affairs investigations, force used, shootings which took place. So we stay aware of that. So please, be engaged as individuals. If you see something's wrong, be willing to complain. Be willing to let your voice be heard. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks.
Thanks a lot for that. Ms. Terry, would you like to say something?
I'm sorry, how do you pronounce your name, Attorney Manuelian?
Manuelian, yes.
Okay. Today, I have to explain to people that this was probably the worst day of my life. My son had been incarcerated in San Bernardino County for the last 13 years in county jail. Now, he was charged with murder. And he finally went to trial in 2010. There was a hung jury, and of course the DA decided to retry the case. The case was retried after the DA and I questioned the jurors from the first trial. I am a paralegal, so that's why I was participating in that. The jurors from the first trial only talked about, well, he's a gang member. I said, what evidence did you hear that said he was a gang member? And they said, well, the DA said so. This is exactly what was said. So we go back to trial. In the second trial, the focus was, is he gang affiliated? Someone from here, from the DA's office, told me that it was a violation of Evidence Code 352 to bring in mentioning any kind of gang activity if there's no gang allegations in the case. So of course I brought all that up, and because there are no gang allegations.
Let me stop you. Why did your lawyer file a motion to
I have
stop?
the same question.
Okay,
let
me give you the history, and then I'll tell you what happened today. Bottom line is, so all that was done. We ended up having to, basically, the last trial, the second trial, they found him guilty. This is after the DA's closing statement was, we don't know what happened. We don't know what happened. We don't know what the mechanism of death was. We just know there's a child that's dead. Now, it couldn't have been an accident, which my son said. The child fell down the stairs. Bottom line is, today, and I'm one of those naive old people, you know, that thinks that there's justice. I really believe that. And so I kept telling myself, this isn't going to happen. I wrote, over the weekend, I was up all night long. I wrote a petition to have the jurors' names and addresses unsealed so that we could question the jurors and ask them whether they were influenced at all by the comments about gang activity. The prosecution's own expert said, we have nothing that shows that this man has ever had any gang affiliation. So I wrote the petition. I also wrote a petition to writ the judge, because the judge refused to release the transcripts to the new counsel that wrote the new trial motion. Refused to release them. He stated in the first hearing, I'm not inclined to give a new trial motion. So he basically said, I'm not going to do it. Today, my intention was to try to prevent sentencing so that I still have some remedies in the state court. I also, like I said, I wrote the writ petition, and which was supposed to be filed in the Court of Appeals. The attorney lodged the writ with the judge that I was writing the writ against. And they went ahead with sentencing. And I'm going to tell you, this is when what he said earlier about telling your kids to learn not to talk to the police, because some of our children seem to think that the police are their friends. And my son is one of those people. He was sentenced to 55 years to life today.
He gave a statement to the police?
He wasn't being arrested.
Why did that hurt him? You said that when I mentioned that you shouldn't speak, what did he say to the police that hurt your son's case?
Well, my thing is, my son called me after this incident. He said, oh, Mom, you know, Detective so-and-so is really nice, and he knows it was an accident, da, 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 da. So my son goes away. They came back 2 months later and arrested him.
Ma'am, what you're with, I'm really sorry. I'm not talking as an OIR attorney, as a public attorney. The very hardest trials, I did about 86 trials in my career. The very hardest trial I ever had to do is when they are deceased or dead children, dead age. Exceedingly difficult, exceedingly emotional, and what you said about not talking to the police is critical, because when does anybody start with law enforcement? Often the detectives who work family violence cases tend to be some of the nicest people, they don't come across as police officers very often. And you lull into answering questions which seem to be reasonable questions. And what you don't know is how law enforcement is trained to ask questions. There's a particular company out there based on Police Interrogations and Practices, written by John Reed, which trains law enforcement how to ask questions. And so, for your son was completely innocent. There was some sort of an incident. A child passed away. There were some head injuries. And I feel so awful for you, because I can almost write the script for you exactly how it all went down. In the coroner's report, probably to have an expert witness who testified in terms of what the cause of death was. I can probably almost guess to tell you what her name is. Probably a doctor who's probably from Torrance, UCLA, or Harvard. No? Well,
San Bernardino.
It's one of them.
Yeah.
Okay? Right. So it's really, really hard. And the point is, I'm not trying to take...
I can't say that she was married to the coroner.
But I'm not here to take sides or anything, but it's really critical, especially in instances when a child has passed away by what you, truly in your heart, believe was an accident, which someone else comes along and says, right, there's mandatory reporting statutes in our state, right? Nurses have to report, doctors, teachers, social workers, so many mandatory reporters. That ball gets rolling so incredibly fast. And the last thing you should do is really cooperate. because you don't know where they're coming from. The very first thing you should do is call a person like him and say, I don't know what's going on, they're asking me questions, what they'll do next. And he'll probably tell you no problem.
I want to say something. I'm sorry for your son, but you know the last time you were here, I offered my help free to you. Because I said to you, my son was looking at 70 years to life. I didn't pay a dime. I worked with a public defender, and I'll ask you, let me read that transcript. I haven't heard from you.
Ma'am, with all due respect, I gotta tell you something with all due respect. Deceased infant cases are, as I said before, are the most extraordinarily difficult cases to try. And actually, probably the very best thing that happened when I'm listening to you is that he got sentenced today, right? Because it sounds like you weren't getting any traction with this judge whatsoever. So now he has his appeal rights in the Court of Appeal, and he's got to, the fight is over, okay?
So let's be honest, okay, because I've been doing this a long time too.
Yeah.
And 85% of all appeals are summarily denied. You know that, and I know that. So did I want to hang his life on an appeal? No.
Well, no, right, but that's the place where hope is, to fight that fight.
That's the only hope left.
And if evidence came in, which you don't think should come in, for example, you got the second code, 352, why did evidence of gangs come in? There's so many issues there, who knows, but regardless, I'm truly sorry for your whole experience. It's not easy.
My question, coming back to my question is, I heard you say that you do pro bono.
Pro bono for cases where people have been beat up by the police.
Okay.
I would love to do pro bono for everybody. If I did, I wouldn't be able to work and put food on the table. But what I do pro bono is, for example, if your son, if you gave me a call and said, my son was arrested, he has no record, he's a good kid, and they beat him up, those are the kinds of cases I take. They're basically cover-ups, police cover-ups, where police officers profile a young kid, an African-American kid, they beat him up because they think they can, just give him a lesson, whatever the reason is in their sick mind, and then when they find out the kid's a good kid, they say, oh my God, what do we do now? They're not going to just say, sorry, and then let them go home. They're going to tag them with a fake crime. Write a report that's completely exaggerated or lied to in the reports, and those are the kinds of cases that I handle. Completely innocent people. So yes, I do pro bono in that department, but with your son, as my colleague here said, very complicated case. I would consult an attorney, and I appreciate you helping her out, but you really need somebody, not only an attorney, somebody that's tried homicide cases, a lot of them, that has experience in that particular field.
Yeah, what I suggest, at this point, right, appeals, right, I assume you filed a notice of appeal today?
I did.
Okay. So
his attorney didn't, but I did.
Well, and was he reviewed by retained counsel or by appointed counsel?
Retained.
Okay.
Private attorney?
Private attorney.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen,
I'll just say this. He has appeal rights now, and he's not afforded his own attorney, right? He, for example, paid for his trial attorney. He's now entitled to have an separate appointed attorney for appellate purposes. And the Second Circuit, Court of Appeal, they use the California Appellate Project, and they'll appoint an attorney to the California Appellate Project, will then have the case from here on out. So,
I'm actually familiar with the California Appellate Project because I work for them.
Oh,
sorry. That's why I know so much about appeal.
Okay.
But anyway, I just wanted to share that with the other parents in this room. When he was talking about telling their kids not to talk to the police. I don't care how much they trust them. They should not talk to the police because what you say can be interpreted many, many different ways. A lot of times our kids are not as articulate as we would like for them to be in the way that they express themselves, and people have a tendency to turn around what they said to make it what they want.
It's called twisting the words.
Exactly.
Or I have another term for it, it's called pencil effing. When they pencil F you on the reports.
Okay, that works.
That's what we call them.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank R.J. Manuelian. Pardon me? I would like to thank R.J. Manuelian, who is a member of NAEJA, who's one of our attorneys. He does pro bono. I don't know about the Trinidad case, but if he has no priors or anything like that, it's a possibility you can get him as an attorney. I'd like to thank Ron for giving that presentation, and OR for being here. Also, Lieutenant for bringing the 238 officer-involved killings. That's one thing that we're very concerned about. And that's how I feel. One of the things we're going to do at our next meeting, we're going to have a meeting on all those 11,000 gangbangers you're talking about, and we're going to try to find out what's going on around here with 98,000 people, allegedly, probably over 100,000. But if we got 11,000 gang members, and we're going to do an advertisement, do some emails, and do some internet, and try to get as many people down here as possible, especially if we got 11,000 gangbangers in Compton. We need to talk about that. And we'll try to see, can we fill this place up, talk about that, and maybe have some of the ex-gangbangers come in here and find out why do we have 11,000. We'll try to get some ex-gangbangers to come to the meeting next month. See, can we take care of that problem.
And before everyone leaves, if you want any cards from RJ, I can pass them out to you. So just come see me.
Is anyone from the Trinidad family here? They left? Now, here's the thing about it. I don't know what kind of attorney the Trinidad might. Maybe you can find out. If they don't have an attorney and he doesn't have any priors, then I can talk to R.J. Manuelian about this case. But if you can find that out for me, maybe we can help him. He's represented? Okay. Then that knocks that out. Anyway, I'd like to thank the community for coming out. And Kemp, thanks you for coming out. One of the things that we're trying to do with the district attorney's office, I talked to one of our members in Dallas, Texas. They was a member of NAEJA. They have a wrongful conviction unit in Texas. And we're going to try to see, can we get some legislation to try to have a wrongful conviction through the DA's office. And I don't understand why the DA haven't filed with the county grand jury on some of these cases. And it's something we're going to have, and we're trying our best to get the DA out here to the community. Jackie Lacey, the DA, just got elected. We have sent her letter after letter to come here, and we're going to have to talk to her about coming out to the community. Once they get elected, we don't see them no more, and that's a shame. Now we went out there and tried to help her get elected. Now she show up. We blasted her in the newspaper, in the LA Wave. We talked about her not showing up to these meetings. So that's one of the things. I'd like to thank Dr. Thomas for coming out. I'm glad you're coming out here. The public is missing the boat by not coming to these meetings. We have attorneys here, people that can help them. They're missing the boat. I know we have voter apathy. Do we have community apathy? So, it's a shame that we have all this information and the people don't come out. That's why I'm thanking you, Kemp, for coming out. I don't know about them other people. I ain't mentioning no names. I don't know. There's other people that's running for office. I don't know why they didn't come here and have public safety. That's all I'm saying, because, as I say, NAEJA does not endorse candidates, but I like to know one thing. If you're running for office, I like to know why aren't you coming here. We'd have 11,000 gangbangers here, police brutality, and those people that's running for office are not here. I think that's a shame. That's what they think of us. And if they don't come now, while they're trying to be elected,